You're watching Taste the Victory.
It's that time again, everybody. The exciting part of a new meta, tier list season. Everybody's coming up with their predictions, and here are Taste of Victories. This is for the English BT12 format after testing and discussing with friends. So let's go ahead and see what we're going to tier and where with all the exciting new decks and old decks that are getting support. I do have a TCG player affiliate link in the description below. When you click it and buy singles through the tab that it opens, you support the channel with a little kickback. I use that to buy decks to keep making content for you guys on this channel. Thank you, and I appreciate anyone that uses it. And as always, if I forgot to put a deck on here or anything like that, that says all you need to know about it. It's not very playable, or it's just a fun pet deck for locals, which is fine. Not everything needs to be tier 1, and it's important to have decks supported at every level of the game in terms of skill level. So let's start with that new stuff that is being introduced in this set. First up, we have Hunters. So this is based on the final season of Cross War's Young Hunters. This is kind of like Crossheart, except they have a bit more of a focus on digivolving in the endgame because of their tamers, which reduce digivolution cost. They put things underneath those either by swinging in security and then getting deleted, or by their tamers beginning of main phase effects. Then they will use those to put things underneath, reducing play costs and getting really important inheritables, and the rest of Xamon Superior mode is just going to remove almost anything off of your opponent's board. It's a fast deck whose main setup plays into its strategy anyway, so the payoff is very explosive in the endgame and not too much of a hindrance in the beginning anyways. So this deck is truly insane. You play very fast, you pass turn usually just by setting up your tamers, but your tamers start paying for themselves right away, either by guaranteeing you 3 memory, or by gaining you draws or extra memory and stuff like that. You gain security attack +1 pretty effortlessly in the deck, and you have some of the best removal in the entire game. And if they have ways to play around your removal, you have cards like Shoutmon and Quartzmon to be able to get rid of them in other ways or to stall the game until you can. You have an incredible amount of tools to control the game, a fast pace that is really difficult for some decks to keep up on, and built-in jamming that is more or less easy to trigger if you can see it in time. It's an amazing deck that has an out to almost anything and has a very fast playstyle. So our first deck in tier 1 of this video is going to be Hunters. It is quite crazy because all the stuff it can do for such low memory investment is absurd. After that, we got an old deck that is getting new support, and that is going to be Red Hybrids. Red Hybrids get some really fun stuff that focuses a lot around playing things from your hand for free with its on deletion effects. You get a lot of lethal out of nowhere sometimes. Like before, you need to worry about hitting Tamer out of security and giving Hybrids lethal. Now you also have to worry about deleting their stack, and they suddenly have 2 Flamemons and an extra Takuya out, and that Takuya is going to warp into Emperor Greymon for 3 or 5 memory, and it's going to blow away your security with security attack plus who knows how many. It's a really fun, explosive deck that can quickly build up now. It has a lot of recursion, and it has inheritables that draw and all that stuff to somewhat offset the hand size decreasing with all your play for free effects. But not too much, as Red Hybrids, red in general, is a color that doesn't have much draw power. It's great. It comes out of nowhere, it has a really threatening security that could give them lethal out of nowhere, and you were able to keep pace with a lot of the deck. However, many meta decks in this format have tools to get around it. If they can get rid of your stack without triggering their on deletions, you are much slower than them. And stuff like Beelzemon, for example, simply just clears your security for 1 memory, and they don't have to worry about triggering your security effects that can give you lethal or remove their Digimon that is pressuring lethal. So there are a lot of meta decks that are able to play around this deck and answer its main gimmick, so for that we're going to put this in 1.5. It's fast, it's explosive, but it is a little clunky, and it has ways to play around it pretty easily for some of the best decks in the format. After that, we got Commandramon. Some of these decks we won't have to spend too long on because they're kind of self-explanatory. I like putting this deck in every tier list because it's always going to be good to some extent. We're going to put this at the king of tier 3, and even that is probably being mean. You could probably get away with this being at the bottom of tier 1, but we've gotten very, very fast in this format, and stuff has gotten better at trashing security, so it can't rely on security stalling out game long enough for it to win like it could better in previous formats. It's still an incredibly good deck that is always going to be somewhat playable due to the nature of being Rookie Rush with a powerful security and ways to endgame out of nowhere with Dark Xamon. So I am at the very least putting it at the very top of tier 3. Then we have Armors. Armors is a great deck with some amazing tools in it, like Mechamon X that just stops your opponent from swinging and then recovers you 1 and all that stuff. It's fast, but it's kind of clunky, and a lot of decks are incredibly consistently fast now, so unfortunately this one has definitely gone down a peg. It's a toss-up between either the top of tier 3 or the bottom of tier 2, but I like Armors. They are pretty fast, and they do have some tools where if you play it well, they can get around some stuff, so I'm going to have to put this underneath the bottom of tier 2. Then we have Gallimon. Gallimon is yet another deck in this format that is getting new supports. between a whole new line and a new Tocado. It gets new warps, it gets additional memory gains, it gets plus DP, and it has access to the new mechanic Raid, which lets it get around Blackboard Greymon and stuff like that. Unfortunately, you still have a lot of pieces you have to hope to see at the right time, all of them in hand, and then you don't have too crazy of a payoff compared to other people's decks, because like Beelzemon, you're trashing 3 security off of 30 in your trash, which you fill up so fast for 1 memory. Meanwhile, you have to like hope you don't pop something with Gallimon's effects, and then maybe you get to trash 1 or something like that. It's just very fair deck, so unfortunately for now, we're going to put this somewhere towards the top or middle of tier 2. It can do stuff, the new support helps it keep pace with the meta, but unfortunately it is not enough to compete with the meta, just barely hold on instead. Now we have a new deck that everyone is hyping up in this format, and for good reason, Beelzemon. The starter deck is amazing, and it's pushed to the next level with Beelzemon X in this format. The deck already quickly fills up its trash for some incredible effects payoff, like being able to delete your opponent's Digimon up to how many levels you are increasing based on trash, getting security attack +1, and gaining back memory. Now, Beelzemon X for 1 also lets you trash security to make your swings incredibly safe based off the number of trash you have, and it is incredibly easy and fast for this deck to fill up that trash. Your mills only help extend your win con because you either play out Impmons for free, putting out so much pressure, or having that starter deck Impmon set up to be able to thread in a Warp Digivolution into another Beelzemon that has security attack +1, and then go into a final restand with Beelzemon X to end game, or gain memory off of stuff like Wizardmon and Deathslinger. It just does so much, so fast, incredibly consistently, and borderline autopilots itself. So this is my call for best deck in this format currently, tier 1. After that, we got Blackboard Greymon. It did get a ban list hit recently, banning the Greymon X that is red and black to 1, but that is done for good reason, because the deck is still extremely good. It would just be absurd with it is all. Like, don't think the deck is unplayable now. It's a lot slower and much more manageable, so other things that weren't able to compete as well previously in Japan will have more room to breathe here in North America, but it is still a threat that you need to plan around and know how to play around their breakpoints. The deck is amazing. It gets huge DP on your turn, so this thing is incredibly hard to swing over. If you don't swing and try to play around its blockers and stuff like that, you are now setting them up for raid to get additional effects. They can still reduce with Cool Boy if they decide to run that build. It does so much. Security attack +1, all this crazy stuff. Destroy your board, just absolutely wipe it away because all of its effects. And then again, being able to boost on your turn is huge to make it hard to swing back, or you have to invest a bunch of memory to get rid of it with an option. It's still an incredibly good deck, just a little bit more fair, but still with all that and being able to have access to good timber removal still, this is really good into this format. So we're going to put this again in tier 1, our top 3 decks of the format so far. Then we got Mechamon X. So Mechamon is in an interesting position. One of the things holding it back in BT11 was Blackboard Greymon X. As we saw at Nationals, it struggled to be able to top 2 well because of this deck being so good into it, being able to build this gigantic blocker that it can't bounce because of its multiple instances of protection. Now, however, one of those instances of protection is reduced to only 1. It's a very fast deck, but other decks have gone up in speed or have had really good payoffs given to them in terms of removal and protection to be able to compete with Mechamon X now. So like, it feels like a lot more of the format is playing on the level this deck was already playing on 2 sets ago. The format is a lot more fair to it. There's a lot of stuff that answers very well and easily now. Like, things will just come out of Raising and OTK it, like Beelzemon, after a couple chips with some rookies. And it doesn't really have too much it can do in response to falling far behind, because you have like one instance of blocker off of Mechamon X when it digivolves, and that's about it. Other decks are just way faster now, so I think this has definitely fallen from the glory days of before, and it's kind of amazing to see that. Yeah, because all the decks in tier 1 are incredible matchups into it, even the stuff in tier 1.5, because it does have like some good matchup into hybrids, because you don't have to worry about setting off their on deletions if you're just bouncing everything. However, they're usually going to have it set off by then anyways by swinging into your security and stuff like that. So this is a tough choice. Like, I think it's inherently a very strong deck, but it's not going to be able to compete as well in 1.5. I think putting it in tier 2 might be incredibly harsh to it, but like, I also don't feel too comfortable putting it in 1.5 because I don't think it's going to get the results that it needs to be in 1.5. I think we're going to be generous, because I think putting this on the same level as Armors and Gallant is kind of harsh to it, so I'm going to put this at the bottom of 1.5 for now. After that, we got another X antibody deck that was hyped to the moon before and has kind of fallen off. This is Grandis Gachamon. It's still doing great stuff. However, Booster Set 12 is introducing so much stuff that's going to be really hard into it. Like, Blackboard Greymon X just completely runs over this deck. So does Beelzemon. Like, Blackboard Greymon X will get so big, you're never going to be able to swing into this thing or pierce over it or anything like that. Beelzemon is just going to like absolutely fast outspeed you and run you down and delete your stuff with its with its mill on deletion effects or its one Digivolving deletion effects, and it doesn't have to worry about anything out of security either because it can just trash it. A lot of decks kind of just do its gimmick better now. It used to be ran at Nationals mainly just as a counter to Blackboard Greymon, and that's kind of gone as a meta centralizing force. Like, it's still gonna be there, but Hunters and BLs are by far gonna be the more popular deck in my opinion, so you don't have that niche anymore of being able to counter this one specific deck that's going to be everywhere. So I think this is just like king of tier 2 for now. Not bad whatsoever, but man, is it still good. I think maybe that's hard, but like all the other decks that have the same gimmick of just OTKing really quickly do it better than Grandis Gachamon, because Metal Guru can draw way better, Blackboard can do so much more than just OTK, and like if you don't draw well in Grandis, it's completely doomed. You have such little draw power in Search. Then we got Crossheart. Crossheart gets insane with so much support in this format on top of what it already got in BT11. You have the new Mechamon playstyle, and you also have Superior mode now. I think Mechamon playstyle is really strong and able to compete pretty well into the top decks. It's fast. It's able to bring out stuff, give it blocker, give it retaliation, give some additional swings. It's a lot of stuff that plays well into the top decks because you're stopping them just from being able to plow through you in one turn. Being able to get back that one turn is very valuable in this format, and it's able to do it pretty consistently fast and delete your opponent's Digimon at the same time. You have pretty threatening security by always getting stuff played out for free in terms of your tamers and setting you up for next turn. So I think it's a really great deck overall. We're going to put it at the top of 1.5 for now because of its speed and answers to meta decks. After that, we got Bloomlord. Bloomlord is amazing now that it has access to Quartzmon. It's probably one of the fastest decks that can build up into a Quartzmon, which just shuts off your opponent's turn unless they have to wait to remove it or play something out that has Rush or able to, again, delete Quartzmon on that same turn that it comes out. It's an incredibly fast deck. It's able to go wide, less Death X in this format to punish it, less wide stuff in general to punish it, because usually into Hunters it's going to be great because you have all this stuff. Even if they tuck out your Bloomlord, maybe you already have Bloom Hydra by now, so, and then some couple of rookies and stuff like that out, so like you have a huge board that just one Arrested Dramon isn't going to be the end of the world. They would have to be able to pop multiple things on top of that. It's incredibly fast. It has really great removal. Like, oh, it's so good with that Hydramon to be able to just get stuff off of the field and bottom deck it right away at the end of turn. It's powerful, it's fast, it hits hard, but I think a lot of the decks in the top formats are able to do that as well and answer its board pretty efficiently, mainly Beelzemon, mainly Blackboard Grey, and Crossheart. The rest of Xamon, as mentioned, kind of struggles into it, and Red Hybrid is kind of just doing its own thing, so we're going to put this somewhere towards 1.5. It's really great, but a lot of other decks can do the same thing at a bit more consistent of a pace. Then we got Shine. So Shine gets a lot of cool support in the set, and it's going to get more in the next set. But for now, it's really not too good because like a lot of the stuff doesn't grab itself as consistently and fast yet. You don't have any crazy payoff. A lot of it is just reducing your tamers and getting them out quickly and then paying that memory to turn markers into a Digimon, start swinging and all that stuff. It's too slow competing into these incredible decks right now. It needs to be able to have more copies of what it wants to run, which is going to get next set with additional Greymons, with additional Marcus. It's going to be insane. But for now, like, it's just not consistently fast enough, and the payoff is okay. It's not like game breaking, it's not bad, but it's just kind of okay, and in this format that's not enough to compete. I think this is honestly a tier 3 deck. If we're being real, top of tier 3 up there with Gachamon. I really don't think it does anything into this format, unfortunately. It's a bad one for it, but it'll get better, so no need to worry. After that, we got Dark Knightmon. So Dark Knightmon is cool. People seem to have been discovering that this has a niche of countering Beelzemon. Anything that has a very good shot of countering the best deck in the entire format is always going to have some rogue status if it doesn't have too many bad matchups. But Dark Knightmon is in an interesting position where this deck really sucks outside of being able to counter that one deck. Like, it's been a meme for a couple sets now. But why does it counter it so well? Beelzemon kind of just kills you in one turn. It trashes all your security. However, this guy sets up so many blockers consistently. Your Dark Knightmon X is a huge blocker that is really threatening for this guy. Then you go, if they somehow get rid of it, or if they just take the swing with a really big guy and you have to block and die to deletion, that's okay, because then you bring out another blocker, the level 4, and then that one, or the level 5, and that'll bring out another blocker on its own. You're just able to consistently set up so many blockers, and then Digicross next turn to continue your game plan that it really stops Beelzemon, and often you're going to be winning off of deck out because many people won't be able to kill you before they deck themselves out. It's really funny of a niche. It's cool. But however, that's all it could do. So like, if we're being incredibly generous, that will just get it the very bottom of tier 2. because being able to answer that well to the top deck is definitely amazing. And then everything having blocker does rely on seeing Nene, so like, and that's always awkward, you know, having too many combo pieces, because then you have to hope to see all of them. So yeah, it's kind of okay. Then we got All Force. All Force is struggling, man. This deck is a lot of pieces to see a combo that is kind of done better in other decks. It's cool. It's fast. It's able to compete in BT11 right now. I think it's okay, you know. This deck has had a lot of cool text to it to help it compete throughout the formats, but now this is a really, really fast format. One of the best decks deletes its tamers, and that's really important for it. And then, like, if you don't, we have Mulligan at the very least to help it get a little bit more consistency. Is just okay for the necessary amount of investment. I don't want to be so mean to this that I put it in tier 3 because I think it is pretty fast, so we're going to put this towards the bottom of tier 2. Because this at least has plays it could do if it draws well and your opponent isn't doing too hot. It has answers to some decks, so we are going to put that at least a little bit up there in tier 2. Then we got Bagraman. Bagraman is a tier 3 deck. You do get new support in this really cool boss monster here in BT12 that is like good removal and good protection, but still, like, the other rest of the deck doesn't really do anything. It's incredibly slow, and you only can do so much unless your opponent is playing into it with your sources and stuff like that. So it's a deck that just can't compete. It's not fast enough. But it is really cool when it works, and I think it can work at the locals level. Then we got Mechamon. Mechamon has gotten consistently so much support, and now it gets even more in BT12. This deck is super good. Like, it's insane how much it's evolved, basically. It's great because you have a really good matchup into hunters. You just have to play around it very well and not give them opportunities to, you know, give them bodies to tuck or tamers to tuck the Mechamon underneath and easily remove. Other than that, you are blowing up their tamers consistently. You have multiple avenues to go to blow up their tamers, which is really good. And, you know, being a big blocker is something that is really annoying to Beelzemon, so you have some good niches into the top decks. It is able to compete because of that. So I'm going to put this somewhere around the Gallimon tier of tier 2. Maybe you can even put this to 1.5 at the absolute bottom of 1.5 because this is a really great deck now. It just takes a lot of work to pilot well and know what you're doing. So I'm not too sure if we're gonna see the results necessary to put it in 1.5 that I'm predicting. Then we have Galactimon. Unfortunately, this is a tier 3 strategy. It saw some success recently at, I think, EU Nationals and one of the special rules Ulti Cups. But the Ulti Cup was special rules, bringing the speed of the game a bit down for Galactimon to be able to compete with. It has great protection into hunters, so I do believe it protects against that. So that's a little niche that it has there, but like, it just takes a lot of setup in a format that's insane. Beelzemon X will delete you before you can get to this guy, to your boss monster. So unfortunately, this is tier 3 because a lot of other stuff will as well. Then we got Blue Flare. Blue Flare is a really good deck still. This thing can stun your opponent's board and be able to control it fairly well, or it could go for an OTK strategy and be able to swing for multiple checks and restand and OTK. It's really good and versatile. It's only going to get more supports. I think strong. However, I think a lot of the other decks, again, you know, story of this entire tier list is other stuff is doing it more consistently. Like Cross Hunters and Young Hunters are basically the exact same concept, doing it better and more efficiently and more consistently. But this deck definitely has its niche of being able to have a good threatening security with its tamers and some of the options, and being able to quickly OTK if it wants to go into that. So we're going to put this somewhere towards the top of tier 2. I think it's still really strong. After that, we have Security Control. Security Control is one of those decks I said that is always going to be good, unfortunately. Either somewhere in 1.5 to 2, always, just by the very nature of the game and being able to like annoy and tilt your opponent and all that stuff. However, now in booster set 12, we have a lot of options to be able to just trash security, a lot of avenues to do that safely. Or if not, your deck plays around security and doesn't worry too much about being blown up by it like hunters. Like, you're just gonna go underneath the tamer, cross, digivolve, give something rush. You know, you're not set too far back unless you're pushing for game, and even then, you know. So it's definitely dropped in power level now. I put this somewhere towards tier 2 now, where I would have put it in tier 1.5 consistently before and up. Then we have Loop, Mervamon, that kind of loop strategy. This is a deck that takes a lot of skill to pilot, but it is rewarding and able to do well into the top decks when it can. It has tools to stall out the game with blockers and stuff like that, which I've mentioned before is really important into decks like Beelzemon. So there are tools there for it to compete. I'm going to put this somewhere towards the middle of tier 2. Then we have Jasmon. Jasmon has really fallen off. A lot of these decks clearly easily pop its board, and then with just like OTK you, because you have to be able to draw well and make sure you set up your stack to get that like almost Exodia-like combo of shutting off everything once you go into Jasmon GX and put the right sources underneath it with Gachamon. But it's a lot to ask for it to see in a format as fast as BT12, so man, I think it's a little unfair to put this in tier 3, but we are not going to see results for this deck. I'm going to have to put this somewhere around there, I feel like. But it is at the very top at least. Then we have Xamon. Xamon is a funny deck. It's one of those DNA Digivolution decks that has a nice niche of being a big gigantic blocker. So there is something it could do against Beelzemon there. There's a bit of a niche there. It's really good into Grandis Kuwagamon. If for whatever reason that becomes popular, you have a good answer into it. Just a lot of good stuff there. But man, do you have an abysmal matchup into Hunters, because they could just, if you put one tamer at all, you're just tucking your big boss monster underneath that and you're done. GG. And if you set up a second stack that you usually need to be able to assert pressure and draw for your piece and stuff like that, you're going to put that underneath that and then pop that with your inheritable. So yeah, it's a really rough format for it. I would have to put this somewhere towards the bottom of tier 2 because it does at least have niches into the top, some of the top decks, by being able to become big gigantic huge beat stick blocker. So we're going to put that towards somewhere at the bottom of tier 2, probably in the same tier as All Force, because it does have access to evade, it does have access to blocker, so there is something you could do. Then we have Reaper. Reaper is going to be a tier 3 strategy. In a set like BT12, this thing is way too slow. However, it does have a niche into hard countering Beelzemon, because that thing cannot pop anything in this deck because they don't have levels. Every single removal in purple is level based, if I'm not mistaken, so nothing can touch this deck's cards in Beelzemon, which is pretty funny, but like, it's still slow. And they're just going to trash your security with Beelzemon X. So you have to hope to see Gatekeeper in hand pretty quickly and get it out right away. And even then, you need to get 2 out because they just got security attack +1 for a couple turns, you know, warp into another one, you know. So like, I think maybe putting it in tier 3 is kind of harsh just because of that niche. Like, we put a couple of decks at the bottom of tier 2 just because they had a niche into some of the best decks. So maybe, but I think this has even worse matchups than Dark Knight. So I don't know. We'll put it at the very bottom. Then we have Imperial. So this is a deck that pains me to put where I'm going to put it. I love Imperial Gachamon. I'm a big fan of O2. It has some of the best designs in the entire franchise for me personally. Imperial Gachamon does get new support in the set, focusing also around supporting the DNA Digivolution gimmick. But it kind of takes it in a new direction. You don't really use much of the old stuff anymore. It's a lot of the new stuff, and you're only really using the old starter deck Imperial Gachamon to be able to set up for future DNA Digivolution plays by playing out its level 4 sources. It's a lot. It's a lot of pieces. If you don't see the other piece of the color, you're kind of just like going into mediocre effects for overpriced cost, and that's going to happen pretty often. In a format where everything just digivolves and plays normally and does it so fast, you can't really compete, and you don't have a strong payoff for how much more work you have to put into it. So yeah, this is going to be, honestly, I think we're not going to see too many results for this, and it's going to be a good tier 3 deck. Then we have Mechamon. Mechamon is a funny deck. It is still pretty fast now with the new supports. It has threatening security, some of the best options in the game with Chaos Degradation, but it is, while being faster because the new support is still slow compared to the other decks just by being a DNA Digivolution at the level 6 level. So this is probably somewhere in the same tier as Imperial Gachamon. I would put it above it, however, though, because it is more playable. And even that, I think, might be a little harsh on it, but we'll have to wait for the results to see to confirm or deny it. And finally, we have Alphamon, which I'm probably going to put in the same tier around Shine and stuff like that, because it's just kind of fallen off and isn't able to do as much as it was once able to. It's not as explosive as it used to be, and it has lost access to some of its best tools. And that is going to be the final tier list. I think a lot of the stuff here towards the top of tier 2 can absolutely shift to 1.5 on the dime. Like, it could easily go either way, and it's basically up to what you personally feel is going to do better into the meta and what's going to be the most popular. So mark my words, these top 4 are very volatile and able to shift around, I think. So don't be too upset by putting it in there in top of tier 2. But like, tier 2 is still good. It can still compete. It's just like you have to work so much harder is my definition of it, that I just can't, in all good consciousness, put it above the other decks or in the same tier. That said, this was a fun list to make. I am looking forward to this meta. I personally like the decks that are viable from 1.5 and up a lot more than BT11, so I think a lot of them feel a lot more fair outside of Beelzemon X anyways, you know, so that's another plus for me too. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait for this format. It's gonna be super fun to play it. Let me know what you guys think of the tier list, and let me know if you're looking forward to this format or not. I'll see you guys in the next video, and until then, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.